Getting you set for all things Rutgers right now on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. We'll talk Tommy DeVito, we'll break down the offensive line, and also give you a couple of keys for Syracuse to win this pivotal matchup against a Big Ten foe. The Locked On Syracuse podcast coming up.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your Rutgers preview here, breaking it down with Tyler, Aki, and Tim Leonard, and we're on YouTube too, so be sure to subscribe to the show there, as well as if you're not subscribed to the show, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff, the Odyssey app as well. Today's episode brought to you by RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com. We love tweeting along with you guys as well, so you can find us on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. We've had some good engagement there. And also on the YouTube note, if you leave a comment, whatever, we'll talk to you there as well. I see a lot of people in the live chat as well when the show does air in the live stream. That's usually coming out around lunchtime, usually about noon, 1 o'clock Eastern time each day. So be on the lookout for that. You can turn on our Twitter notifications as well, because we always tweet out when we are going live or about to go live. So be sure to do all that. All right, Tim, so it's Rutgers week, and I think there's a couple of really important factors heading into this game, and I believe it starts and ends with the quarterback and Tommy DeVito, because what DeVito did, we broke it down on our 2 episodes ago now, did he actually have a good game? And I think you and I, when we got to the crux of the argument, basically said he game managed his way through. And game managers sometimes have negative connotation to it, but I don't think that's necessarily should be the case. I think he's going to have to do a little more than game manage against this Rutgers team.
Yeah, Rutgers has a little bit more pop, I'd say, than Ohio. Now, it's interesting because you look at their final score, 61-14, and I hadn't watched the game yet, but I went back and watched it this week. And I was expecting to see more from the offense. Really, the 61 points they got were a lot because they forced a lot of turnovers on defense. Yep. They had 5 turnovers, and that's what they do. They're kind of like Syracuse in that way. They get after it. They are aggressive defensively, and they force a lot of takeaways. They were very strong last year in a pretty tough schedule against mostly Big Ten competition. I think all Big Ten competition. They went 3-6, but they forced, I think, 18th in the nation in turnovers. So that's what they're going to do, and that means Tommy DeVito cannot fall victim to that, right? Like, he's got to take care of the football, and we've talked about how we wanted to take more chances, but it's a fine line of sort of hitting those home run plays that we know we can hit, but also taking care of the football against a team that really gets after it and forces a lot of turnovers.
So top 20 in the country a season ago, they led the Big Ten. They were tied with Indiana in that regard. And one of the fascinating things about that, too, is it wasn't through a lot of interceptions per se. Usually when you see turnover numbers, it leans the way of the interception. But in Rutgers' case, theirs were fumbles. So to break it down, Rutgers had 8 picks last year to just the 12 fumbles recovered, and the fumbles recovered was best in the Big Ten. Indiana, who they were tied with 20 takeaways from a season ago, they had 17 picks to just 3 fumble recoveries. And I think the interceptions are probably a little more sustainable than the fumble recoveries, but what it does tell you is that this is going to be a Rutgers defense that is flying around and can knock the ball away, and you're going to have to take care of it. And if Tommy DeVito is going to get hit in this game, he's got to tuck that ball. So I'm not worried about Tommy from an interception standpoint, because that hasn't been a problem for him throughout his career. Only 10 picks in 24 games. But if he's getting hit, and if he's holding on to the ball for too long, then the sacks maybe turn into strip sacks and you're losing possession and then you're giving points the other way.
No, I think this actually works out well for Syracuse, because when you look at what Rutgers did last week, they beat Temple 61-14. But like I said, it was a little bit misleading. I mean, they did that so much from turnovers. Their total yards in the game were 365 total yards. Pretty good offensively. But Syracuse actually had more total yards than that. Syracuse per play had more yards. So maybe you could make the argument that if Syracuse takes care of the football, that takes away a lot of Rutgers' pop. And while Rutgers does force a lot of turnovers on defense, they're also pretty vulnerable. I mean, they've allowed a lot of points on that end. They don't have a lot of high-end talent because they are in a rebuilding phase, and they haven't gotten a lot of their top recruits ready to play pivotal minutes yet for Rutgers. So I think Syracuse is going to be able to move the football. The question is, can they take care of the football while also mixing in some chances and mixing in a little bit more of the playbook this week?
I'd expect a lot of short, quick passes once again this week.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see Tommy air it out, but the difference can be when he does air it out, can he take advantage? Because last week on his 2 downfield passes, he didn't connect with his receivers. That has to change. And you can say, oh, well, Taj Harris maybe should have laid out for one ball here, and Courtney Jackson, maybe he ran a wrong route, whatever. It doesn't matter. You got to connect with your receivers. You have to be on the same page, especially you've brought it up too with a guy like Taj, where you've been on the same team for a long time now. That chemistry should be down a little bit finer than it is in what it seems like.
Right. And the other thing about Rutgers is they're going to blitz. It seems like, at least, based on what we saw from them last year. Since Greg Giano has taken back over, they're going to be aggressive. I mean, this is a defense that wants to get after it. They want to force pressure. And Temple really had some opportunities last week, but there was so much pressure in their quarterback's face that he did struggle. Then their quarterback left the game because of injury, and that made it even tougher, of course. So Tommy DeVito's got to stay poised in the pocket. It's going to be much more of a challenge. I'm not saying Rutgers has one of the best defensive lines in the country, but they've got the quarterback
guys in the linebacking core, though. That kind of scary.
Yeah, they do. One guy.
We'll get to them, I think, in a little bit. But right. I would also expect DeVito probably won't use his legs as much. I don't think they're going to do a lot of read option stuff, because when you do have the linebackers and you see the fumbles forced statistic with this Rutgers team, that tells me that there's a lot of guys that can get in the backfield, that are moving quickly, and that are always in a good position to make a big hit.
Right. They were 11th in the nation last year in tackles for loss. Their sacks weren't off the charts, but they played a tough Big Ten schedule. They got to the quarterback a little bit, and that linebackers, Fatu Kasi, who's the really good guy for them. He actually, I thought, was going to go pro and be a pretty high NFL draft pick. Came back. He had 3 sacks in their first game against Temple, and I think he was their main sack guy last week. But they did return both of their good edge rushers from last year in terms of sack numbers. So they're going to put more pressure on DeVito than what we saw against Ohio. He's going to have to be a little bit quicker through his progressions and everything. It's just like, basically, he beat the opponent in the video game the first week. Now he levels up. Can he take it to another level this week and continue to show progress in terms of the areas that we really have wanted to see him grow in, which is decision-making, poise in the pocket, and taking care of the football against a team that is going to throw a lot at you defensively and try to turn you over. And I feel weirdly pretty confident, like you said, that DeVito is not going to turn the ball over this week. I'm still a little worried that maybe the offense won't be as crisp when there's more pressure in his face, though. That's going to be the concern.
Yeah, my kind of to piggyback off of that is I'm a little worried, is the game going to speed up too quickly for him, which is weird to say about a quarterback who's in his redshirt junior season, but is this going to really come at him fast here? Because he played an Ohio team a season ago that when we talked about them, they're not a team that's going to get in the backfield against you. This is a team in Rutgers that can get after you. And you're just hoping that it doesn't get too fast for him, and then he maybe makes a bad decision here, takes a few too many sacks.
The other thing to bring up with DeVito, it's a New Jersey team he's going against here, Rutgers. Yeah. So is there a little added pressure?
Same for Deuce.
Right.
I mean, all that stuff is in effect here.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal because he faces a lot of pressure every week, and there's a lot of people watching him every week, but you want to play good against Rutgers. It's almost like if your, out-of-town relatives came to the game and they haven't seen you play in a while. Like, he's probably going to be going up, or a lot of people are going to be watching him that maybe are remembering him from the high school days and all that. So maybe a little extra pressure, a little extra motivation for him to do well, and you hope that doesn't force him to press at all.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of former guys that he played against, too, in high school. He'll see on the other side of the field as well. All right, the offensive line, big question for this team. Can they sustain what they did a week ago against Ohio? We'll talk about that next. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it is impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand that the warehouse happens to carry? You've got computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You'll save save time and money when you use rockauto.com. Why spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same part from the chain store or car dealership? Use rockauto.com. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and the prices are reliably low for every customer. So go to rockauto.com. Their website's super easy to use and navigate. And write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Again, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Diving into this offensive line here, I'm really intrigued with this step up in class. And you look at some of the players that did really well. I think Matthew Bergeron had a very good game, especially in pass protection. And then we brought it up, not necessarily an offensive lineman, but Max Mang was really good in lieu of Chris Elmore last week, especially in the running game. But this is a team that's probably going to have to throw a lot more this game because of the fact that they might find themselves trailing and you're going to have to get Tommy going. I want to see what this cohesive unit looks like when they do have to step it up in pass protection.
And not only pass protection, but can they continue to provide that big of running holes for Sean Tucker? Can they continue to sort of have a run-dominant offense against a better team in Rutgers? Now, I do think Rutgers' defense will allow points. I do think that the more I dug into them, there are some holes in that defense. It's a young defense. It's filled with some playmakers that just aren't very polished, and that's kind of their offense as well. They've got a lot of skill guys out there that feel like maybe they're a year away from being good, and they're just not really veteran guys at this point.
They're Schiano guys, right? They're guys that Greg Schiano has brought in. They're young right now, but they're the guys that he's hoping can turn the tide of the program.
Right, and that's what you hear. I was reading through the Athlon Sports, like opposing coaches' viewpoint on Rutgers, and basically to sort of summarize that, a lot of opposing coaches were saying anonymously that Rutgers, you can tell they're trying to do what Schiano wants to do, but they don't have the pieces quite yet. And they don't have the athletes or the high-end talent just yet to make that work. And they're going to give up a lot of points this year. They're also going to make some plays on offense that are scary good and show some pop there offensively and defensively. The question really is, if Rutgers does not force turnovers in this game, I don't really know how they win. I think that's so much of what they do has been forcing turnovers so far under Greg Schiano in kind of the second phase here.
I look at it too. You brought up the tackles for loss when you were talking about DeVito, and that's going to be something that this offensive line is going to have to deal with. Whether it's Fatu Kasi, Tyson Fogg, really good for them. Maije on the defensive line, he's really talented. Those are guys that are going to live in the Syracuse backfield. And if Vettorello, if Bleich, if Aaron Service, if those guys aren't up to the task, Darius Tisdale, if they can't keep Tommy clean, if they can't keep Sean Tucker, give him a little bit of space to operate with, this could be a long game. If Syracuse can't get the running game going, let's say Rutgers is getting into the backfield and making some plays back there, making Tommy panic, stuffing Sean Tucker a couple times, then this won't end well for Syracuse. There's a wide variability for how this game can go. I don't think there was a very wide variability for where the last game could have gone against Ohio, but for this one, I mean, Rutgers, if they're imposing defensively, if they're turning Syracuse over, then they could win by a ton of points. But meanwhile, on the other side, Syracuse, if they have an improved offensive line, if Tommy's gunslinging, if the run game is what it was from a week ago, then guess what? They could win by a ton of points as well, too.
Yeah, it feels like whoever establishes the run game first has a big edge in this game because both teams want to run the football.
Usual.
Right. I mean, that's college football. It's Big Ten football, especially, and I guess Rutgers. Weirdly, I still can't get over that Rutgers is in the Big Ten. It doesn't really line up in my head, but whatever. And they were, I mean, pretty respectable last year. Like that's the thing is when you think about Rutgers of the past, where they lost, I think 20-something odd conference games in a row, and before Greg Schiano got back, yes, Syracuse would have beat up on that team pretty handedly, but this is a team that won on the road at Michigan State last year. This is a team that challenged Michigan. Michigan was pretty bad last year, but still, they won 3 road games in conference play last year. They're returning 19 to 22 starters from last year. So, yeah, I think whoever runs the football and whoever runs the football first kind of and gets it going on the ground first is going to win this game.
And that's why the home field advantage, I think, plays a big factor. If that place is loud and you're getting a couple false starts on one side and maybe mixing up snap counts here and there, then you're going to put yourself in a good position. These Orange fans need to show out in this game. Try to make some sort of difference for it, because Dino Babers talks about this. Oh, we need our 12th man out there. We have the greatest home field advantage in college football. You really don't, because the fans have not shown up for the majority of Dino's tenure as the head coach. There was a bunch of games, I think, in that 10-3 season where they showed up, and I always point back to that NC State game as being one of those games where the place was loud, it was rocking, that Saturday night atmosphere. That was an awesome, awesome game to be at. But those games have been sparse where the fans show up, and I think this is one of those games where it could really make a difference in terms of dictating the outcome.
The other thing is Dakota Davis going to be on the line? When you talk about the offensive line, I think that's still a question mark. When are we going to see him? How much are we going to see him? Is it still going to be all Darius Tisdale there? And then even on the opposite side of the trenches, what are we going to see from Bear Williams, Kingsley Jonathan? Are they going to be healthy? Those are three really big injuries that if information comes out about them right before the game, I mean, we're already down Chris Elmore, which we talked about this off air. Like, Max Mang has been just as good, I feel like, for what they want out of Chris Elmore. So that doesn't concern me too much. But it would be nice to have Dakota Davis healthy for this game. It doesn't look awfully promising considering he was still labeled as the second guy on the depth chart, or actually bumped down compared to week one. And I know Dino said initially that he thought he'd be ready for the opener. Now it's just kind of wait and see, I guess.
And with Max Mang, too, I'd love to see, and again, I feel like we talk about this all the time, but Max Mang would be more of a threat in the passing game if they use the tight end. Because we know Chris Elmore is not going to go out and catch passes for you. Max Mang might be able to. We haven't seen it yet, but maybe that's
still not. That's not his game, though. I mean, like, Luke Benson's the guy that
Luke Benson's certainly the guy. Right. That's the guy you'd want to incorporate. But if you're going to have a lot of running situations and you're going to throw out a run blocking tight end, maybe Max Mang can give you something in the red zone where it can be one of those play action and then you pop a pass over the middle and you find someone like Mang in the back of the end zone. All right. We will get to some of the keys and some other little tidbits heading into this matchup as well, including the importance of this game for Syracuse, because I think this is a really, really good litmus test for what they can be this season. But there's a few things in life that just aren't fun to talk about, and one of them is excessive sweating. You know, sweating through your shirt for no reason, it can be pretty embarrassing. Now, it's not life or death, and there are worse problems in the world, but let's be honest, in the moment, it feels like the world is crashing down on you. Nobody likes to pit out during an important speech, interview, or, God forbid, a first date. I'd rather not worry about it, and that's why I use SweatBlock antiperspirant wipes. SweatBlock is stronger and more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. You simply apply it at night before bedtime, go to bed, then the next morning you wake up, wash, and go about your day without worrying about sweat. Guaranteed. I know it will sound too good to be true, but literally, you just have to put it on one time. Just once. Maybe twice a week, and it keeps you dry the entire time. No more pitting out, no more picking shirts based on which will hide the sweat better. If you or someone you love is dealing with this, you have to check out SweatBlock. So get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with our promo code LOCKEDON, or check them out at Amazon and CVS.
All right. Also, I want to tell you about BetOnline.ag, your number one spot for all pro and college football action and betting this season. And this is our last chance that we can remind you guys about this, because if you are listening on Thursday when we drop this, it is the start of the NFL season tonight. Amazing. Thursday, September 9th, the season opener, Super Bowl champion Bucs, Dallas Cowboys, and they've got a great opening day super promo on betonline.ag. If you make a bet, and it can be up to $25 that you get refunded on any bet for first-time customers only, using the promo code NFL100. If you lose on your opening day bet, any bet on the Buccaneers or the Cowboys, you get refunded up to $25. That's for new customers only when signing up and using promo code NFL100. Also, if you head to their website today and sign up for that free account, don't forget we also have a promo code that gets you a 100% welcome bonus as well. That's up to 100% with the NFL season on the horizon. That promo code is Locked On. It's all one word. Again, promo code Locked On for 100% welcome bonus. Promo code NFL100 for a refund up to $25 for any bet on that big NFL game tonight, Buccaneers and Cowboys. It's all over at BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
This game is mega important for Syracuse.
Yes.
It feels like it dictates the tone of the season. Ohio was a good win. You felt really good coming out of it. But hey, look on the other side with Rutgers. As good as Syracuse fans are feeling after their week 1 victory, Rutgers fans, they might be feeling just as good, if not better, about their team heading into week 2.
Yeah, I think what this game really comes down to, if I had to pick one key for this game, we talked about Tommy DeVito offensive line. That's important. But for me, it's perimeter tackling against Rutgers is really what's going to determine this game. Who can tackle the most in the open field? And we know Deuce Chestnut was terrific in that regard against Ohio, so I'm confident in the cornerbacks. But the safeties, the linebackers, so much of what Rutgers does is just getting their skill guys the ball in the open field. They have a couple guys that are in the return game that are also playing at the wide receiver position. Even their running backs, they are very good, very explosive in the open field. A big play waiting to happen, as the cliche goes. So you've got to make sure that you're wrapping those guys up. And if Syracuse can tackle, that takes away a lot of what Rutgers does offensively. And a lot of what Rutgers is trying to do is just get the ball to those playmakers and then let them do their thing from there. I'm a little worried about that because Syracuse has given up a lot of big plays in the past, but I feel better after what I saw from Deuce last week in terms of the perimeter tackling.
And again, it's sort of for Deuce, really for everyone that played well in that first game. All right, show me again that you can do it, because it's one thing to do it against Ohio, a team that was very poorly coached and quite frankly doesn't live up to you in terms of skill that's on paper. Now against Rutgers, I think the playing field evens itself out a lot more. And for guys like Deuce and Max Mang and Sean Tucker, do it again. Maybe not as much in the case of Sean Tucker because he's done it a number of times for his college career, but in his very brief college career, I should mention.
Yeah.
But guys like Deuce, Mang, you saw a couple flashes from Anthony Quealy as well. Do it again. I need to see you do it again, because that was the big problem with this team. There was no consistency last year. There really hasn't been consistency the last 2 years with this team.
Yeah, and I talked about who can run the ball first will be a big thing. I think who hits a big play first, or who is able to get some big plays, will be big, because we know both teams can do it. We know both teams are kind of inconsistent on offense, and we don't really know what we're going to get from them each time you watch them, but they have that capability. I think of Bo Melton, the wide receiver for Rutgers. If he's out in the open field, he's a tough guy to tackle. Aaron Cruikshank is their returner, who was basically the best returner in the Big Ten last year. He returned 2 kicks for touchdowns. He's going to be their guy that you're going to have to watch in the punt return game, kick return game. But they're also going to try and get it to him on screens, crossing patterns, quick game type stuff that really we see a lot from Syracuse. That's what Rutgers wants to do. They want to be no huddle, spread it out type offense. And their quarterback doesn't really have the arm that DeVito does. He's not going to throw deep a lot, but he's pretty good at getting the ball out in the flat to his receivers and letting them make plays.
For me in this game, I need to see Tommy DeVito make 4 or 5 big-time throws and important throws. We saw in the last game, he really only made 1, maybe 2 you could qualify. And he didn't have a lot of attempts either. He only threw the ball 17 times. But this game, he has to make 4 or 5 really big-time throws, whether it's deep shots, whether it's some 3rd and longs that he navigates Syracuse out of, whether it's the pockets collapsing and he evades out of a potential sack and turns it into a decent completion, extend plays. I need to see him make 4 or 5 big-time throws in this game. We saw him do it with the legs. I don't think he's going to be able to run as much in this game as he did against Ohio, just because I think the linebackers are far and away much more talented on this Rutgers team. I mean, you've got a guy who's in contention to be a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. So you're not going to be able to run as much. So you're going to have to rely on your arm a lot more. And if he can't make those big-time throws, I think it's going to pretty much dictate the outcome of this game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how Greg Schiano and the Rutgers coaching staff approaches the first couple defensive drives for them when they're going up against DeVito and the Syracuse offense, because one strategy could be, all right, let's stack the box. Let's do our downhill blitzing, be ultra aggressive, and make sure that the run game doesn't get established, because so much of what DeVito can do and so much of DeVito's success is dependent on, all right, have they established that the run game is a threat that opens up play action, opens up the deep shots, all that? Or are they going to play more back on their heels and say, run the ball against us, but that completely takes away their vertical passing game, which is a lot of what DeVito is known for. And if DeVito's only throwing checkdowns the whole game, then Syracuse could be in trouble. Because like I said, he was able to do that against Ohio. They're able to run the ball and pick up 4 or 5 yards a pop. It's going to be a little bit tougher when you step up in competition to a Big Ten team that has won some pretty big games in the past year.
I mean, we can make the Rutgers joke all we want, but this is a team that Syracuse did not beat last year. And what I mean by that is this,
right?
Yeah, right. This is a caliber of team that Syracuse did not beat last year. I liken it almost to what Duke was a season ago. They didn't beat Duke.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't beat a lot of the bottom feeders of the ACC in what was not a very great conference a season ago. You got embarrassed plenty of times last season. This is a chance to completely change the narrative surrounding your team, because if Syracuse goes out and beats Rutgers, and then you pretty much, you can bag up a win against Albany after this too. 3-0 with this team, the entire country is thinking about them very differently with wins over a Power 5 team. And just the fact that you've won 3 games in a row. This Syracuse team doesn't win 3 games in a row very often. Okay. I'd have to go back and check the numbers, see how many times they've done that, but under Dino Babers, but this could completely change the way people think about you. People will start to take you seriously if you beat Rutgers.
And the other thing is, a bottom barrel Big Ten team, I hate to say it, but that's better than a bottom barrel ACC team recently.
Yep.
Like I saw a stat today, I think someone tweeted out, and I apologize, I can't remember who it was, but I guess the ACC has lost 13 straight out of conference games against Power 5 opponents now. And I'm sure that streak will end soon, but look, like some of that is just tough matchups. Clemson's played Georgia, so on and so forth. I'm sure it just hasn't lined up a little bit. But Syracuse played Maryland out of the Big Ten week 2 not that long ago. They got beat pretty bad. There's a case to be made that maybe the ACC is going to get exposed this year in these type of games. Syracuse is at home. That's an advantage. Rutgers isn't great by any means, but if you're a bottom of the barrel Big Ten team, you're probably playing a tougher conference schedule right now than you are in the ACC.
Right. And I mean, this is a big week for the ACC as a whole. NC State's playing Mississippi State. I think that should be a very good game. You've got Pitt taking on Tennessee. There's some good games and some good opportunities for the ACC to bounce back after what frankly was an embarrassing weekend a weekend ago. So we will get you all things Rutgers. We'll look more on the offensive side of the ball for the Scarlet Knights on tomorrow's show. I also want to talk special teams because that could be a very, very critical thing. You brought up Cruikshank earlier in the show. I want to get to some stuff with James Williams, Traber Pena, and then we can talk about the Rutgers special teams because they're a dynamic group as well. So that's coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll also have DeBundo's Digits. He's going to get you all of the advanced analytics, the fancy numbers for this matchup on tomorrow. So be sure to subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Odyssey, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to you guys with all things Rutgers on Friday.